A male can never understand what it's like going through pregnancy and going through a period, and we cannot ever understand what their body is going through and how their brain is thinking. So there's no way we can ever psychological relate. You can change the psychology, but you cannot change the biology. And I was like, holy crap, that is so true.
Hello everyone, welcome to Claimed. Today I have two very special ladies with me today, Giselle and Rochelle, and they're here to share with all of us their amazing claimed journey. So Giselle and Rochelle, welcome. And I wanted to say, first of all, thank you for being brave, because I know sometimes it's most of the time it's quite vulnerable, right? Because we're dealing with relationships and men and the relationship with ourselves and the claim program and in this work. And so I really wanted to say how grateful I am for your time and your presence. And I know that all of the listeners or viewers, wherever you're watching or listening to this, are going to be also really grateful. And so let's begin with you introducing yourself and tell us who you are, where you're from. And we'll start with you just sharing how did you find about my work in the beginning? So if you go back to where you were before your journey in Claimed. So tell us a little bit about where you were before and how did you find about my work? So we're going to start with Rochelle.
All right. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited. I've been listening to the podcast for a long time. So yeah, my name is Rochelle. I'm based in Brooklyn, New York. I'm from Quebec, I'm French Canadian. I speak French. And basically I moved to the States 10 years ago because I got married to an American man who lived in California. And so I kind of like lived this like American California dream for a while. And I went through a divorce kind of like a while ago now, actually, like 7 years ago was when we first separated. And to be honest, it was a very difficult separation. But I think what happened is that I definitely closed off and became extremely obsessed with my career. Basically, 6 years of me being extremely frustrated with my dating life, having trouble with finding, men even attractive, and always seemingly finding men that were always unavailable and living far away or didn't seek a relationship. And I really started to feel extremely sadder and more depressed. And the feeling of like you're broken. And I know I was not broken, but I really felt that way. And I was drinking a lot. And even looking back at the pictures during that time period, which was a solid 5-6 years, I see these pictures and I'm like, I cannot believe this is me being younger. Like I feel I look older. And so I did tried 2020 is when I started. I was still dating another guy who didn't want to be in a relationship, and it was the pandemic. And I started really researching more coaching approach. So I did find one, but it was you had to purchase the videos. There was no coaching calls. There was no Facebook group or anything like that. It was a little more literature. And so I was kind of like writing a lot and trying to understand, what it was about kind of like loving yourself and putting yourself first and what do men want and things like that. And I remember also starting following all these Instagram male account about, like this guy would be like what men want and like to be irresistible. And I was just spiraling. I was obsessive, just like watching these videos all day long, meanwhile trying to still attract these kind of men. And I was so in my head, and I had cut my hair also extremely short. So I actually it was not a good look. And last year I was living in Canada again, and I came back here to New York. And then I met another man, and I was like, oh my God, he's perfect. We went to the same school together. We're both artists. We have great chemistry. And then same thing, very early on, I started asking him if he was looking for something serious. I was inviting him everywhere. I was initiating everything. I was paying for my part of the date. And then I was like, wow, here's another unavailable man. And that shattered me. And I was like, you know what? That's been too many unavailable men. I am just not understanding what's wrong. And I think I just saw you on Facebook. It was just like probably my algorithm that knew that I was looking into coaching. And I had my discovery call with Barbara, and I remember just like crying the whole time I was with her. Like it didn't take me too much to convince me, although I was a little bit skeptical because I had been, watching so many videos, following so many Instagram accounts that I was definitely a little bit suspicious. But last year was kind of like a year ago, basically, exactly. And I spent the whole summer just, you know, reading everything and doing all the modules and just really diving into that.
So we'll talk about that next. I have a quick question for you, Rochelle. So there you were, and like there's every woman has a story, right? Like for you, it seems like it's been a long time of attracting unavailable men and trying different things and watching Instagram and doing
Yeah.
this and this and that. And then there comes a point, and I feel like that's so common. And Giselle, you maybe can speak to that after. There comes a point where I feel a woman is like, okay, I have to do something about this. This is not working,
Yeah.
and then where is that point for every woman is very different. But for you, I'm curious, out of all these sources that you were following, because I'm sure that everybody that you were following, the male accounts, the female
Yeah.
accounts, whatever, you could have signed up for many different things and explored different avenues. I'm curious, what really resonated in maybe the ad that you saw or the webinar that you saw that really felt for you like this is the right option?
So there was two things. The first thing was I had never heard about polarity before. And I think in the webinar you mentioned that you talk about that a lot about feminine energy, masculine energy. So that is something that I found extremely intriguing. And I was like, wow, that makes so much sense. I never heard about that term. In my head, like effective. It's like, okay, this is not science, but it's based on biology. And then the other thing was, I think Barbara, when I was talking to her, it just seemed like the amount of support that claim was giving, it was very, very different. It was like two coaching calls, like two group coaching calls a week, this big Facebook group, also like the possibility to, just like talk to you personally. I think you even like texted me. Like it felt very personal, and I felt very well taken care of in a way that was not like, this is not a pre-recorded video. Just to be talking to a person who's like asking me these questions about how I feel in my body and like finding like the tension, like, really kind of having this like somatic experience. I learned later that it was like the feminine embodiment, but at first I don't know if she mentioned that like right away. It was more like the body, like how do you feel in your body? Yeah, so that, and just the fact that I was able to cry to someone for an hour, I was like, I think I just need that.
Yeah, some of these discovery calls are just a place for women to cry.
Yeah.
So somebody can listen to their 6-year frustration with
Yeah.
men, which happens a lot, So I feel like, some of these discovery calls, not all of them, but a lot of them are really when women get real. Because, like, yeah, we have girlfriends and stuff, but it's different when you talk to someone who is a complete stranger, like, for example, even a coach, right? Where you can be just who you are and you don't have to pretend or know that this person knows your history or whatever. You're just coming in and you're like, this is me and this is my problem, help
Yeah.
me, So yeah, cool. So for you it was two things. Polarity, you found this extremely intriguing, and the second thing is just I guess the experience or the environment of the program where you heard how much support
Yeah.
is available and that we work with you, and it's a group coaching program, and yeah. Okay, beautiful. Let's move on to Giselle. Thanks, Rochelle. We're going to come back to you. So, Giselle, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then how did you find about my work?
Hi, thanks for having me. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, cool. Basically, I would say I was brought up in a family where I was very much into making sure I take care of myself in a very strong, independent way. Because I was growing up with 3 other siblings, so I was the youngest kid. I always felt like I'm always inferior. I always need to like prove myself, and so I always have to like show up in a different way compared to other siblings. So I always felt like I have to work harder. So from that going on, my mentality about like life and men and relationships just kind of build up since I was a kid. I always wanted to be a doctor. I always wanted to like help people because I always wanted to basically, in a way, to show people what I'm capable of. From that on, just kind of went on and kept building to different stages of my life, from school, high school, college. I always wanted to be on top, high grades, GPA. So I think it all started from that point, from high school, where I wanted to make sure I am the top student and I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do as a woman, and just kind of keep myself in that relationship with myself and other people where I can do everything I want to, basically. I don't need anybody else, kind of thing. So that mentality just kind of shifted through this situation, especially seeing my mom always, my dad was always a provider, and seeing my mom always wanting something, she always had to ask my dad. And my dad was I grew up in a kind of like a controlling family, and so with all of those combination, I was very into pretty much I can do pretty much everything on my own. And my mindset was like always like there's no man that I want to depend on. Even if there is, it's like I don't want to depend on them. So my mentality just kind of went on from there, and from relationships to relationships, from dating, from different type of men. I always attracted a fixer upper kind of man, where I kind of like wanted to help them and help them grow and help them get better in life and coach them and try to like make them successful and be like, you should do this, you should do that, and always wanted to like be that girl to like the coach, because that's what I labeled myself, as that girl. My story is very similar to Rochelle. I moved to California and I actually did get married. Very short marriage though. I kind of ran away after 1 year. It was a very abusive, controlling relationship. It was exactly the relationship that I tried to avoid my entire life. I got married into that. And the only reason I did that was because I thought maybe that's just the way it is. I tried to kind of normalize that thing in my head, thinking, okay, if I really want to settle down and get married and be in a relationship, I have to like basically be submissive. But submissive in a way that kind of like my mom was, kind of like in a way that like, okay, whatever man says, I have to say yes, kind of thing. And I changed myself. I changed who I was. So from that point on, after I was like, this is really making me sick, I ran away. I had to start all over again and basically start from zero and build my life, build my career and everything that I worked so hard for. And then on again, I got into a relationship with like more feminine male, because then I thought maybe like if they do listen to what I say, I'd be more happy, because I didn't want to be in that toxic masculine relationship anymore. So I really went back and forth into that whole pattern of like, man, I want to be independent. Then I was like, okay, let me be submissive. Then I was like, you know what, this is not working. Let me just have my control back, so then they can do what I want. So I went through the whole cycle, literally trying every different type of relationship that I thought it should and could work for my body to feel at ease. And right around, I would say, after my last breakup in 2018, I was single for like a year or two, and I was like, all right, that's enough. I need to take a break. I was always from one relationship to another, long-term relationships. So I was like, I need to take some time to myself. I kept going back. I'm like, what is wrong with this pattern? Like, I mean, I have everything I want. I work so hard. I have my career. I have my health. I have the family. I have the friends. I have, everything from outside looked amazing. But from inside, I was suffering so much that I wasn't sure what is really the cause of my pain, because I just couldn't find that like, I was like, why can't I just find it? And so in 2020, when the pandemic started, I not because the pandemic started, but just I guess it was the timing of my own life pattern that just brought everything together at that point. where I was like, you know what, I want to start doing coaching seminars, this. So I started working with Tony Robbins, I started working with other two coaches, and then I came across yours, and I was like, let me add this one on too. Why not? I'm doing everything. I might as well do this one. And when I came across yours, it was very interesting because when I was doing Tony Robbins and the other two coaches, everyone started talking about the polarity thing, and I was like, what is this whole polarity thing? And when it clicked with you was, I do wellness, and so I'm all about wellness, I'm all about whole, like, the body healing and everything. So that's my career, that's what I do for people. And so when you said it's not psychology, it's biology, I was like, whoa. I mean, you said exactly the sense that you said you can change the psychology, but you cannot change the biology. And I was like, holy crap, that is so true. I mean, I was all into psychology and philosophy and everything and trying to figure out, and Tony Robbins talks a lot about psychology and everything, and how 80% of your life is all psychology and everything. But when it came to polarity, I was like, this is biology. This is what I do for a living. I mean, biology, it's like something like you cannot change biology. So it came out
So
to the
can you
point.
explain that a bit more? Sorry to interrupt you, because this is actually, you're talking about something really interesting, because I feel like, polarity right now, feminine masculine polarity, is so popular and common. Everybody talks about it, and I feel like it's not that I discovered it, because I didn't come up with polarity, but what I've done, I didn't just accept it as a status quo, as something that's in my experience, it must be, and then this whole polarity, feminine, masculine, it's like divine feminine, go into the realm of energies and whatever. But I was really interested, maybe because my mind is this way, I'm kind of in between, very woohoo and very grounded. I'm somewhere here. So I went actually deep, and I was interested. Why? Like, you can't just tell, like, for me, it wasn't enough to say, feminine masculine polarity exists in everyone. Most women identify with the feminine essence. Most men identify, like, why? So that's why I went and did the research as why. But I want to hear from you, Giselle, because this is such an important point, and I think the distinction. How do you explain this in terms of, like, biology, when you understood that? Like, how do you understand that it's actually biology and not necessarily psychology? Although, if you really think about it, in the program, I teach you this concept of evolutionary psychology, which is biology and psychology. But you explain in your own words, what do you mean by biology and polarity?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, biology and evolutionary psychology. I mean, everything at the end of the day, it's 80% is psychology. But I think, being a wellness doctor, I deal with people's mind and body, and mostly obviously body, but how we think and how we behave, there's so much that has to do with that polarity of masculine and feminine polarity. You cannot change the males to be like a certain way, because the way they're structured in chemistry, in a way their brain is structured, the way their body is structured. And just like females, like, they always talk about and make fun of, like, oh, males can become pregnant now, or like they can get their period, blah blah blah. No, it's not gonna happen. Like, it's impossible it's gonna happen. There's no way you're gonna make that happen. I mean, yeah, maybe like you're gonna manipulate the body and put some surgical situation and like tools with everything technology changing, but if you're gonna go naturally, that's not gonna happen. It's impossible. I mean, I don't know if that on that day I'm gonna be around, but I'm just saying, like, these are things that our brain is structured and our body is structured in a way that to think and act in a certain way and be a certain way. So a male can never understand what it's like going through pregnancy and going through a period, and we cannot ever understand what their body is going through and how their brain is thinking. So there's no way we can ever psychological relate. The only reason this whole masculine thing got popular in feminine world was because we just wanted to be more in control of our life. We wanted to be more, independent of our life. We wanted to be more successful. That's it. That's the only reason, because in evolution, we're like women, we're like basically in society, we're like enough is enough. I want to be independent, I want to be rich, I don't want a man tell me what to do. And that psychology just got brainwashed in us. That doesn't mean that I don't want a man to take care of me. Of course I want a man to take care of me, but do I want to have money in my own pocket? Of course I do. So and the only reason I want that is because we want to make sure we're protected for our own safety, and like we don't want to make sure we want to make sure we're in the right place in our life. And that's the only reason the whole psychology shifted with female. You know, of course, if I'm working in the office from 9 to 6 and I have to lead, I have to direct, I have to treat, I have to work, I have to do everything on my own, I'm going to be in a masculine leadership polarity from 9 to 6 p.m. because I have to operate a system at work where at home is different. So when I go from work to home, how can I shift my polarity in a matter of 1 hour? You know, it's like all of a sudden, like, you want me to sit back while I'm driving, you know, how can I let go while I'm still driving the car, you know, like, all right, now go ahead, shift your gear, you know.
Yeah, you want me to be a passenger and the driver at the same time.
Exactly.
That's a really good metaphor. Yeah, I love what you're saying. I mean, you get it, Giselle, and I know for you it's been quite a journey in the program. But we're going to talk about this in a moment. So coming back to, so you were saying, you know, your story is quite common. Although every woman thinks her story is unique, but it's actually really common, especially for the women that we attract into Claim, because, you know, all of the women in Claim are successful women, like including myself. You know, I'm driven, I'm ambitious, you know, people tell me I'm the most ambitious person they've ever met. And so, and I really related that to your experience where you said I had to do everything on my own. Women like us, and I think most of us are similar age, but it doesn't really matter, you know, whether you're right now in your late 20s, 30s, 40s, even 50s. Well, 50s is a bit different, but still, we are in that age gap where our mothers, like, we are the first generation of women who are really living that, you know, modern woman female success.
Mm-hmm.
We have the most opportunities now.
Mm-hmm.
We can do whatever the hell we want. And you know, our parents, for, you know, better or for worse, and especially our mothers, coming from, I think most of our mothers, for the women listening and the women in the program, live that old paradigm, you know, when the woman is the stay-at-home mom and the man goes and is protector and provider, right? And so they wanted for their daughters to be free, you know, to like never depend on a man, make your own money, you have to be independent and successful. And obviously, like, this was such good intent, but as I was doing my research and work and working with women, I realized that really good intent actually became so ingrained deep down inside in a woman that she had to go, never depend on a man, never trust on a man. And of course, she hasn't seen role models of healthy relationship where polarity is beautiful and at play, but it's also healthy, where a woman can succeed and go to work and whatever, but she doesn't need to control everything at home and with her man. And that's the challenge that we find ourselves today as
Mm-hmm.
modern women. And that's what brings a lot of women to Claim, because Claim promises, or at least shows the possibility of how you can make it work, how you don't need to go back to the 50s, how you don't need to, like, say, okay, I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom. I mean, if you choose to, you can too, because that's beautiful as well, but you don't have to. And so, coming back to where you found my work, you said you were working with Tony Robbins and then other coaches, but when you stumbled upon my work, what really resonated with you is that it's not just psychology, but it's actually
Mm-hmm.
biology. And
Yeah, I said she's a genius. I mean, you know, like, I mean, you know, just the way every word that you said resonated with me. And it was just, I was at the point in my life, I had everything I worked for, you know, at the point where I was like, something is wrong, something is missing in this formula. And I knew there's something deep rooted inside me, that, and as I explained, it was, I found out through your program, it was like, you know, it was obviously the belief system from childhood that was just like keep being rooted, and it was just like, it was one thing building on another, and it got worse and worse and worse as I was going through my teenager life, and, you know, adulthood and everything, and obviously failed relationships. So I think your work has to do with the fact that history repeats itself. This is something that people need to understand. I mean, obviously, we never can go back to that, 100 years ago where women were always just like stay home moms, or they wanted to do what what the man told them to do. We're not going to go back to that necessarily, but we need to go back to the point where we have to still feel like a woman, and men need to still feel like a man. And I think men need to understand that too, because a lot of males have changed too. Like, it's not just females like, I want to be independent. Like, males are like, well, she got this, why should I do it? So it's like their mentality of like, because
Oh, she's dropped in the most heated moment conversation. Yeah.
I was just agreeing. Amazing. Also like her perspective, because that is something that I forget that it is. I know that's what you mentioned. That's how you presented that polarity is this evolutionary psychology, but the fact that it is truly biology, in a way, it it helps me even more because it's very concrete. It is just a very real reason that's
Yeah.
based on facts, and I do like that. Like,
Yeah.
I feel it gives a little more.
Gives it a bit more substance, right? This polarity stuff, everybody talks about polarity now, and even embodiment, like, it's all about divine feminine and and then they write and talk, and it's all a feeling, it's an experience. But like for me, that wasn't enough to like, I needed some substance. I needed to, yes, it was true in my body, when I read David Data, and that was my experience. But I'm like, but why? And then I read this book, which is really a PhD. It's called The Mind of Her Own, where it's called The Evolutionary Psychology of Women. And it's amazing how she just goes through everything, all of the studies, all of the research, and how just women, going back thousands and thousands of years through evolution. Yeah, just like you can't change biology. And that's what I'm saying. The biggest thing there that I took, and I think maybe I shared in the program, was that the parental investment, just what Giselle was saying, but basically like, just because the simple fact that women are the ones to have children and to get pregnant. So just that fact actually pretty much explains polarity. If you really go to the bottom of this, because as a woman, it takes on average like 3-4 years to just nurture a human. And
absolutely.
And you can't change that. And so, the biggest problem is that we try to get men involved, but that doesn't work. And so, it's pretty fascinating. We lost you, Giselle, in the most important moment. That's okay.
my phone got frozen.
Yeah, that's fine. Shall we move on now, Giselle, or did you want to add something more to what you were saying?
Yeah, no, I was just saying, like, how I think I've mentioned that to you, that I think you should extend your work to like working with males as well. And they need to really understand and hear this out, and they need to really shift their mind, because I feel like they had to adapt to females being so strong and independent, that they've also changed and became more feminine, and they're not even realizing it. Because they still have that masculine ego where they don't want to realize it. But I feel like that's something that they also need to realize. So I think it's a really amazing work that you're doing, to be honest. And I think people need to hear this out, and people need to the society needs to understand that there's so much when it comes down to our roles and our desires inside. Like I said, I am that woman that I want to be independent and successful and rich, or whatever I want to do, but I'm also that woman who wants to be taken care of by a man. And the only way I can do that is if I am in my feminine polarity. If I'm in my masculine polarity, no man wants to take care of me. Not the only they don't want to, but it's like they can't. Like, what are you gonna do for me that I can't?
Yeah. So I remember, Giselle, in one of our coaching sessions, you said, I thought that if I just work hard enough, I'm going to have everything I want. And you said it in like a deep coaching moment where we drop deeper, because and that, it was so vulnerable, because it just, I feel like it touched upon what so many women are struggling with, and as we talked about, right? Because since the day we were born, pretty much, our mothers and grandmothers, and you got to go and take care of yourself and be independent and and just everything will happen. And then what happens is that you do exactly that, like you did. And then you arrive at a point where you're 30, 35, 40, and you're like, I've done everything you guys told me to do. Where is love? Where is something that's
Mm-hmm.
actually, I don't know if we can say more important, but a lot of the times it's like, yeah, it's really like you should never put in a position. You should never be put in a position to choose between, do you want to have your career or your family? Like, that's a hard choice to make. I don't want to make that choice, but still, there's something there, like a woman's desire to be in a partnership, to be with a man. Now we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about heterosexual relation, and then children come in, right? Like that desire to
Mm-hmm.
have children is something that just hits you like a train. And yeah, so anyways, this is an area of
I'm
life.
gonna say something before I want Rochelle to speak too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna add something. It's so interesting that in the midst of all these things that I was realizing in 2020, and I was doing all this coaching and all of this work. Before, I used to like be this girl who hated these girls who just like, I would ask a man to do something. Like, they would be like, can you open this water for me? Can you grab my bag for me? My nails are gonna break. I was like, are you kidding me right now? Like, you cannot do this on your own. I used to hate that. I used to hate those girls. I could never be even friends with those girls. And even if I was friends with those girls, I would be like, make fun of them. I was like, what's wrong with you? Like, you can't do this crap with yourself. And I remember I would have like patients, even my own patients, like, they would come to the office with their husband, and they would walk with their husband by their side, and they would had to like get up with their husband holding their hand and sit down with their husband pulling the chair. Like, I was just like, really, you cannot get up on your own? Like, you can totally do that on your own? Like, it was like so like stupid to me. And then when I did the work, I was like, now I get it. Now I get it. Like, I totally could get it. And then I went back to my friends list, and I was like, every single girl that I know that are independent, that are successful, and they have their stuff together, they're stuck in their relationship. Like, they're just not happy. They're going on dates. They're just not happy. But they're everything else they have in their life. And every single girl that I know, they don't have much of their own. They have a happy relationship. And I was like, there is something in this formula, like something in this formula that those girls are doing and those girls are not doing. And it was that femininity. Like, it was just that feeling that they were more feminine, and they were more like needy, and then more, the guy wanted to do more for them. The guy wanted to like feel like they're, their hero. And at first I was like, no, this is like me, like lowering myself to like, for a guy to like want to do something for me. If they really want to do something, they'll do it. Like, I don't have to ask them to like, can you come pick me up or pick my bag up? Like, I don't need to ask if you're not gonna do it. I just want to point that
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. And I feel like so many women, when I get women on calls, the biggest fear is that they will become that. The biggest fear is that they will become the needy woman who has to lower herself down, who has to, become submissive, and who has to like just to please a man or whatever and play that role, where the reality is that it doesn't have to be the case. Now, we can talk about, there's also unhealthy versions of femininity,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah,
And so,
which I experienced that one too. Like I mentioned in my
mm,
California
mm, mm.
marriage, I
So
was very abusive and submissive, and I experienced that one, which I know how it is to be in a toxic masculine and toxic femininity world too.
right. So I just want to make it clear to everyone listening that in the Claim program, because sometimes women are like, I don't want to go back to the 50s, and like, what is this about? Like, I'm an independent. I'm like, totally. Like, I'm not for that, but there is a way where, as a woman, you can be independent, successful, have your goals, and at the same time learn how to surrender and learn how to play in that polarity. And guess what? Once you do that in a healthy way, with your boundaries, with knowing who you are, and with letting go of control, that's actually where your power lies, and it becomes all of the areas of your life change when you're able to do that. That's exactly what we do in Claimed. So now we're going to move on to talking about Claimed and what's happening in Claimed, and I'm going to ask Rochelle first. So here you are. I mean, you talked about, where you were before you found my work, and then obviously you signed up for a webinar. So everybody listening, by the way, you can go to claim.com/training and sign up for that magical webinar that Rochelle and Giselle are talking about. I have since then updated it, but it's the new version, a better version of that. So go there. Right. And so you got on a discovery call and you talked to whoever you talked to on the phone, and then you said yes, and you enrolled into the program.
Yeah.
So now I want to talk about, if you can share with us maybe 1 to 2, what were the biggest aha moments for you, Rochelle, in the program?
Honestly, it's been a roller coaster. I think the first few months, my hardest challenge was to lean back. I had never even heard that term before. Leaning back, I was like, what is this? So practicing polarity in not working hard, not making the date happen, like especially with men, right? So I'm just talking about how I was practicing basically receiving and not, going full force, meeting all these men and considering them as a business plan, as you mentioned. So the big haha moment was, for example, to see, with the dating funnel, which is when you have multiple men you're dating, to just see who's available, who's there, who's actually truly interested, by just kind of like observing men's behavior, and being able to make choices and be like, no, I'm not going to go after this one man who's not reciprocating my text or whatever. So I just started to be more observant, just more aware of how I was playing a role in going for men who wanted to pursue me, you know. And that also, for many, many years, I think I was not looking at what are these men doing for me. I was just kind of looking at like, oh no, they're really good on paper, they're so good looking, they're blah 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 blah, and I was just going after them without thinking, do they like me? Are they pursuing me? It was kind of like non important for me at the time. So that is something that I've realized: when you lean back and you're not working too hard to get the guy, you just see who's actually interested in you enough to truly pursue you and take you out and everything. And then I was like, okay, this is a sign as well. And it was really hard at the beginning because I had to accept dates from men that I was not necessarily attracted to, or I just thought, like, I was like, oh, this is a little like, that's not the guy that I want to really to go out with. And so I got a little sad at some point, because I had this limiting belief that I was only attracting men that were not, that I wasn't attracted to. And so during my claim journey, there was a guy that claimed me very, very early on. And then I was like, great, this feels so good. I kind of like applied all the rules. It's just like I leaned back, he like asked me, da da da, everything. And then I realized it's like, okay, yeah, I'm working on my own emotional availability. But then I realized he was kind of like feminine and he was just kind of like not my flavor. So then I stopped dating him, and then I got a little sad again about this whole process. But it was kind of like a back and forth between, like learning something and kind of like having it in my head and then slowly embodying it. And then another big
So before you move to the next one,
yes.
You actually said something that, I mean, obviously I knew about it, but you have articulated it in a way that I didn't think before.
Yeah.
And this is such an important moment where when you're attracting men, but because deep down inside you wanted to control everything, and that comes from a self-worth issue. Like, I'm not good enough to attract amazing men and to let them come to me.
Yeah.
That creates this like a reactive mode, kind of like, I'm going to get anyone who comes my way. I need to grab them. I need to pursue them. I need to make sure. And so there's that kind of instead of, pulling in, you're pushing and you're pursuing the man, and you're thinking that, oh yeah, I met this guy, and of course there's this one guy, and so there's this chasing. When you are in the chasing mode for men, which again comes from a deep limiting belief of not being worthy of great men, what happens is that, and what you said is amazing, because it totally blinds you. It blinds you to the men that actually like you and want you and choose you, and therefore would pursue you. And so what happens is, when you start to lean back, and of course it's like, I think this part is the hardest one for when women join the program. Everybody's like, I don't get it. I can't do it. I can't wait enough. I can't wait another 24 hours before he messages me. I need to know. It's that inability to be with the unknown. It's that desire to always control, and to what Giselle said, right? Because we're so habituated in that go. I'm in control of my life, and therefore I need to control this. But guess what? You can't control this. And if you try to control this, well, what's going to happen? You're going to end up with either a feminine man who wants to be controlled, and then you're unhappy, and then, like Giselle, you'd be like, something's missing in this puzzle, I don't understand. But when you switch that, and this is like, your awareness of it is so great, because when you lean back, you actually start to observe, right? So you're not just like a passive participant, well, not actually a passive, but super active participant in like chasing the guys, but you're leaning back and distancing yourself from that story. And of course, we're working with limiting beliefs.
And I'm evaluating them. I'm just like, are you consistent? Are you, do you make me feel good? I was kind of like a researcher. I was like, you know what? This is an experiment. I'm doing a research. And so the first guy that I dated, it was great, because I was like, okay, here I am, ready to be loved. I can be loved. And then I deserve to be loved. And then that was great. But it was kind of like almost this like experiment. And it was really easy to lean back with him, because I actually wasn't into him, And so that's the thing. And so the other thing that happened is that a few months later, when I finally met someone great that I was really into, I had a lot of practice that I knew it was working. And then now the real challenge, when you like a guy, I was like, okay, now this is the real work.
That's that moment of tension where this is the next milestone in this journey to, when you have your funnel and you have that top contender that is pursuing you hard, your job right now is to just hold the tension and to not go after him, right? And say, where's this going? Are we, we're moving together or what? Or I want babies with you. Like, no, you just continue to stay in that space of holding tension so that he then feels like, this woman is incredible and amazing. She doesn't want anything from me.
Totally.
And that's obviously that work doesn't end when you end up in a relationship with him. You actually have to practice, because then what happens? A lot of women get in relationships and get married and start to control their men. Like, no, it has to be done right from the beginning. But what you said is, I always talk to, as you know, the women in the program about, can you shift from treating dating like it's a freaking job interview and you're looking for a husband into treating dating like it's a practice? Can you bring your curiosity to the table and say, well, I'm just going to go on a date today, and my next decision is going to be, do I want to say yes to the next date? That's it. And when you do that, this is such a powerful place to be as a woman in dating, because you're allowing men who are interested in you to come to you and not the other way around. And now that I think about it, actually, in my life, and maybe that's why this is so embodied in me, in my life, I never went for guys who didn't like me first.
Oh, interesting. I always did.
Oh, really?
I mostly did. Most of my life, I was always the one to make the move first.
What about you, Giselle?
No, I was very into like guys pursuing me, wanting me, chasing me, wanting to be with me. And I thought, okay, cool. That sounds amazing. That's cool. Everyone wants me kind of mentality. When I would get into the relationship, it was more me trying to control the situation, no matter what it is. Like it was like the paying and them spoiling me and buy stuff for me, taking me out to nice, vacations and restaurants. I've always got that. But I think in the relationship, I I always wanted to compete with them. And I think that's what made me feel like drained. I always wanted to feel like you're not better than me. So there was always a competition. Like I was in a relationship back in high school and college with a guy who we were together for like 6 years, and it was a competition for like which one gets in a better grade, or which one gets in a better college, or which one gets like a better job, or which one, like it was like that competition, like who does
Wow.
what better. And I remember he would tell me, one day I'm gonna drive by you with my Ferrari and you're gonna just look at me and be like, I wish I was with you. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna drive in my Lamborghini and wish you were with me. So it was, yeah, it was
Wow.
literally competition. Like for me, it was competition. I don't think it was more like the persuasion, it was the competition.
Wow. Yeah, just wrapping up that conversation, that when you lean back and allow men to pursue you, then it's a whole different lens where you are the one to choose and decide. And it's such a powerful place to be as a feminine essence woman in dating. So let's get to the next one, Rochelle, and then we'll talk to Giselle about it. So yeah, what was your second aha moment?
Yeah, it was actually that I was myself extremely unavailable emotionally. I just didn't want to be I didn't want to be soft. I didn't want to be, a woman. I also was always trying to prove myself to men. I could do that. I could have a career. I could blah blah blah. And I didn't want to like be vulnerable. I couldn't be vulnerable. I couldn't cry. I didn't cry when I divorced. I basically didn't cry for my entire life. Like it was my upbringing was, I was with a single mother. Everything was, a little hard. Like everyone has a hard childhood to a certain extent. And so I think really quickly around 15 years old, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to be this really funny person who's very animated, who has a lot of funny stories. And then I became a people pleaser. And then it was kind of like really hard to even sometimes understand myself, and be like, oh, who am I? And, and like, what is hurtful to me and what do I like and what makes me sad? And something that I've realized is
Mm.
like, oh, I'm always thinking like I'm an anxious person, but it's like, oh, through embodiment, when I always go on my mat and I'm like, oh, I'm anxious, then it's actually usually because I'm sad, and I don't even like I'm still working on being emotionally available actually, because sometimes I don't know how I feel, and I'm like, I have this tendency to like close off. And I think this like aha moment of like all these years basically dating people who were unavailable or, far away. So the man as mirror principle is something that really kind of like hit me. And I was like, I am just not available at all. I actually don't want to get to the thick of like intimacy. I don't want a real intimate relationship because I'm too afraid I'm going to be rejected and I'm just not lovable, and all that stuff. And I was just like, wow, this is, I have to get mushy. And now it's funny. I talk to my friends, and I get emotional now. I cry in front of people. I cry with my boyfriend. I just cry with my mom 2 days ago. Like I just cry and I'm like, wow, this is so nice. I just cry, I release it. It feels great. I feel so much better and soft and not hard and
Wow.
closed and like rigid, So yeah.
Beautiful. I just cry all the time. Thanks, Anna Rova, for teaching me
Yeah.
how to basically let go and cry all the time. Okay. So before we move on to Giselle and hear her aha moments, I want to hear from you, Rochelle. Where are you now? What's your current situation? If you want to share, what's the results? What's the result of you going through the claim journey?
Yeah, so basically after the feminine men that I was not into, but that was a great practice, I really kept dating around, and then I had a really nice friend who was just kind of like always around and giving me all his time and being a wonderful friend. And then we started to be intimate in January, and sometimes in between we like became officials, and he's just someone that he's this kind of driven masculine, committed man I have never been in my entire life. Even my ex-husband was just like not this kind of like grounding, kind, very taking care of energy. And we've been dating for 6 months, and it has its challenge, but I feel I'm such a like the better version of myself, because I'm not this like rigid, unavailable person, and he is too. And I'm just like having this like flowy, very flowy love that I'm like not ashamed to tell him, that I'm not like, and it's still difficult. It's like there's challenges. It's not perfect, but it just feels very authentic and very deep.
Yeah, and I find that, well, congratulations. I've been following your story, and we also shared your story through to our email list, and it's just been so inspiring. And to what you said, when you do this work, your internal work as a woman, the quality of your relationship, not only the men that you're attracting, the relationship you're romantic, but the quality of all your relationships change drastically, simply because you are just being more of
Hmm.
you, which sometimes was hidden all your life. And so there's this like blooming or awakening, rediscovering yourself as a woman. And the quality of the men you're attracting is different. And also the quality of the relationship. Like, as you said, the more emotionally available you
Yeah.
become, the more emotionally available men you
Yeah.
attract. And then the more intimate and open, and there's a lot of depth and richness to that relationship as well when you do that type of work. So super happy to hear, Rochelle.
Yeah, and also just to conclude, there's another thing that I'm also doing. He's very, very supportive of, let's say, my career. He doesn't feel, he's in the shadow. He's always like helping me, helping my career grow, giving me like feedback. And I feel the same. And I don't feel we're in competition. I think like before I would restrain myself from supporting my men because I would feel they're not deserving or something. I would want to like punish them. So I had this thing where I was kind of like punishing my partners. Like I remember my ex, I was always complaining, like he was not doing enough. And now I feel, because I'm accepting my flaws and because I'm feeling supported and he's supporting me, then I support him back and I accept him for who he is, and then he accepts me, you know what I mean? So it's just this like very, yeah, we're not in a battle. Like we're just on the same team all the time. And I'm just like, wow, I've never had that. I've never had a teammate, like somebody who's on my side, and that's just really wonderful.
It's a really different experience when you go from, as you said, relationships are a battleship for so many
Yeah.
people. And I'm like, how can something that can give you so much joy and pleasure and richness can, how can something like that be a battleship? But then you see these two polarity, these two extremes, and and that's where people are stuck. That's where claim comes in for so many women. Thanks, Rochelle. Let's hear from Giselle. So Giselle, I know that you already talked about your biggest aha moment was that polarity, and that's in biology. And as you entered the program, you started to really understand it with your embodiment practice. Do you want to share one other aha moment that happened for you in the program? What's the biggest one?
I think for me it's just awareness. That's probably my biggest aha moment. Just being aware of what's happening. It's huge for me because I was so lost for so long that I was just like, I thought I was doing everything right and I wasn't sure what's happening. So when I see something now, I'm so aware of it, and that I'm like, all right, this is where I need to calm down, or this is what's happening, or I'm just so aware of the situation. I would say I'm still definitely work in progress, like where I'm still kind of like working on everything because I've been in that protective mode and self-defense mode for so many years of my life, over probably 20 years or so, that for me to like shift in like, everything in like 2 years, it's impossible. But I'm definitely more aware of it. I'm more understanding that I don't want to compete with guys, even though I'm still want to, like, in a way there's like part of me that wants to feel like I have to like prove myself in a way that so I don't feel that like girl who ever feels like she's less than a man. But it's like that part of me, like, comes up, and then I'm just like, all right, stop, like, just stop proving yourself. Where before it was just like, I would go heads on, like, you don't mess with me. So now I feel like I'm very more aware of it. So I could go to that level of like trying to go to that protective self-defense mode, but then I can also try to bring myself back and be like, all right, you need to like let go. You need to like lean back, just stop. So I think that is for me is huge. I am a perfectionist, unfortunately. So I have to have everything in the right way, or you know like everything has to go in a certain way, otherwise I go crazy. So I'm definitely working on that side of me. I'm definitely working on like bringing my expectations down for myself. And one thing I realized is that the more I work on myself, the more I expect from myself, and the more I expect from others. Because I'm always like, well, if I'm working on myself, you have to work on yourself. Like, why should I be the only one working on myself? And then I realized, everyone's going through their own journey. Like, I am where I am, and I cannot force others to be where I am. So really accepting and realizing, and just being aware of the situation. I think it has been really been eye opening. Again, I am still going through roller coasters. I am still going through that up and downs of trying to find myself. So I think that awareness is huge. I always tell patients, like, when it comes to my work, I always tell patients, like, you can live in a sick body for so many years and just ignore it and just be in pain and just constantly be in pain and never really do something about it, versus you are at the point where you're now aware of it and you know what's happening with your body, and you actually want to take care of it. So it's I think that realization, that understanding that there's something going on with that pattern of behavior and pattern of habits or pattern of personality, or whatever you want to call it, I think it's huge.
Beautiful. Thanks, Giselle. All right, so we're going to finish up real quick with your message to the listeners or the ones who are watching this. So imagine a woman who is maybe even in a similar situation that you were before, and maybe she feels a pull to either watch the webinar or even sign up for a discovery call or join the claim program. What would you tell her? Why would you recommend signing up for a discovery call and then joining the program, Giselle?
I would say, honestly, I think there's a lot of especially after pandemic, everybody became a coach. So there's,
Right.
there's a lot of coaches out there. There's a lot of therapies out there. There's a lot of programs out there. But I think this program really, like Rochelle said in the beginning, like, it really connects with you because you feel like you are with someone live. You get to talk with them at least once a week. You have the support group, and you get the module where you can always go back to it and listen to it and read it. So I feel like it's just one of those programs where you have the connection for lifetime. And so it's not like it's not limited. And I think the fact that you're in a program with the same group of people, I have become friends with so many people, like few girls, few females within this group. And we've been hanging out, we've been talking, and whatever. I've told you this. And it's so crazy when we hang out together. It's like we don't even have to explain anything to each other. We all get each other. It's like, oh yeah, I understand what you're saying. Like, versus if I would go out with my other girlfriends, I have to keep repeating myself. Do you understand what I mean? Like, do you understand what I mean? They're like, yeah, I don't understand what you mean. So
Yeah.
yeah, just
Yeah.
I feel like the community and the fact that you feel supported is huge. It's one thing to know and listen to all these podcasts and read all these books, and but it's one thing to just being activated every week or every time that you have access to, that you can go back, because we're not robots. And I feel like, as much as I've considered myself someone who always have to work on herself, and who always wants to improve and always grow and always progress in life, I still believe there's so much that I need to work on a daily basis for me to get to what I want. So I think it's just one of those things you have to, not give up and just work for it.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thanks, Giselle. Rochelle, why would you recommend to women listening to sign up for a call and
Yeah.
join?
I mentioned it a little bit at the beginning, but to me, and this is something that somebody said recently, but there's a difference between therapy and coaching. And I had never really understood the differences. And basically now what I'm understanding is like a therapist or doing therapy is kind of like, maybe identifying your trauma and then talking about them and then maybe trying to get over them, right? Like understanding
Mm.
what happened to you and like analyzing your trauma. And then the coaching is basically, it is about understanding what happened to you and like why you became like this, but it's also about how to become the best version of yourself. How can you be happier? How can you kind of like, it's kind of like focusing on the positive as opposed to when you go to therapy, you just kind of like think about the negative all the time and like talk about the negative all the time, and it's very heady. And the coaching seems to be, to my understanding, very about, it's like, no, we can all change actually. We can all become and feel better. And it's about how do you feel, really going into this like introspection. But the thing that I really love about Claim is I've posted a lot. Like I was really, really active for a while. And yeah, nobody's going to listen to my story and be like, oh, that's that's sad. I'm so sorry. Like, no, you'll get commented from women who are like, well, I don't know about this. Like, I think you're being a little too blah, 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 blah. So it's kind of like, it's really nice to just have somebody to kind of like really be honest, because with your girlfriends, everyone's it will always kind of like agree with you and be like, yeah, dump him. He's no, if he doesn't want a relationship, you should just leave him. Everyone has that. And like in Claim, nobody has that. They're like, what are you doing, girl? Why are you asking him? Like, no, you should just lean back. So it's like all these different opinions. So you kind of like become like, you're like, yeah, I'm not always right, actually. And that's okay, because I want to grow. I don't want to get stuck in my negative, like, rigidness and like my trauma and just talk about it all the time. I want to get through it. And yeah, as Giselle is
Mm.
mentioning, like, the group is just such, I mean, to me, like, yeah, I became friends with the, like, yesterday I had like a whole day with one of the Claim member, and we're just like literally, aside from you and I and the Claim women, there are no other women like that I know, like my girlfriends and like my mother, everyone included is, I mean, I'm not saying like we're like, as we're like, we like find the mystery to like happiness with men, but I really feel I have such an advantage. We have such an advantage because we're just not lying to ourselves. Like, it's like, no, we're just being true and be like, you know what, like, this is the yeah, like,
It's like part of a secret club that nobody else knows about, but only you know. And it's
yeah.
like, yeah,
And it's
yeah.
sometimes like my girlfriends, they're like, oh yeah, my boyfriend is not planning anything and blah blah. In my head, I'm like, yeah, you're not letting him. You're too impatient. You're controlling. You're, blah 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 blah. And also like the vision, I think that's true. Like, I really love the podcast that you had with men, because it's trying to understand the
Mm.
male's journey, and that is something that also I think is really really good. And I think a little bit like Giselle was saying, like, that could be even more like emancipated in the program, because it's like these podcasts that I listen really kind of like made me understand that man's perspective and being less hard on them, and that made me feel less controlling. Like, that made me put me back more into softness and being feminine and receiving, because I'm not just judging them and being like, oh, he's never planning anything or blah 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 blah. You're not letting them do that. You're taking charge. You're
Mm.
being too
Mm.
impatient and you want to
Mm.
control and you want to do it your way, and then you feel frustrated that you're taking everything in charge because you're not allowing men to show up, basically.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so we're gonna finish off here. For everybody who's listening, I have an invitation for you to join this super secret circle, where you will have an advantage of being together with women who just get it. And so, of course, if you're listening to this and you perhaps are where Rochelle or Giselle is, or if you're struggling to attract the right men, I invite you to go to claim.com/apply to apply for your discovery call, and then you'll see a calendar to book if you're qualified. And then hopefully we shall see you on the inside. Rochelle, Giselle, I'm So grateful that you have been here with me today, for your time, for your energy presence, and thank you for doing the work, because I know that that part is sometimes hard, but so necessary. So I am really happy, and thank you for doing the work and for being where you are, and that awareness and all the lessons that you're learning. And yeah, I'm just super happy with where you are in your life, and of course the journey continues. So thanks so
Yeah.
much. I will see you on the inside.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.